You just heard Lock Up Your Children from Spectrum of Death from Morbid Saint, 1990. This is the Thrash Extravaganza number 5.
Week 5, baby.
Week 5. I'm Mark.
I'm Jason.
Oh, this is a recommended podcast.
It is.
Yes.
Yeah, you downloaded the right thing.
Yeah.
Hopefully you already subscribed, so it just automatically happened. Yeah. 5 weeks, 5 episodes, baby.
Every Monday. Monday.
Things are getting crazy around here. Hopefully you appreciate this sacrifice that we're making for you guys right now. And hopefully you've locked up your children, because shit's about to get real here, because
Wisconsin's coming.
Sheboygan, Wisconsin, which is near and dear to the heart of Mark and I, because we're from the Midwest as well. And
we have a Sheboygan, but I think it's with a C.
Yeah, up north, up near.
But probably both based upon a Native American.
It's for sure Native American of some sort. Ojibwe, I think, possibly. Yeah,
we came in, we destroyed their culture and took their names.
Yeah. Name a couple universities after them, and
sure.
Call it good. Hey, they got casinos. What do they got to complain about?
We give them Pontiac, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Pontiac. Yeah, who doesn't want Pontiac? But we're. One of the things that I think is cool about doing the thrash journey that we're doing is, there's definitely a different flavor with each week. And we go from last week with Blind Illusion, which was much more experimental, and it had some psychedelic and some progressive elements, and it was kind of lighter and brighter in certain ways. And we go into just like
oppression.
Possibly... I know I brought this up in the Dark Angel episode, is this the furthest you can go with thrash before you're at the very edge of like brutality, and you've entered into death metal.
I think this is a proto death metal record.
This is like right there. Yeah. I mean, it's,
although it came out well after death metal's pretty established.
Although if we go by what the facts tell us, it was recorded originally in 1988, and we're going to play a demo from the Lock Up Your Children demo. So the ideas were sort of already generated, so it's right on the cusp of like when Leprosy and things like that. So I give these guys credit. I think they were in their own sort of savage, brutal way, pretty cutting edge, kind of a tough road though, in terms of like where this album sort of falls. It comes out late in the game, kind of like Violence, right? And so,
I remember seeing the the name and ads and stuff. I just thought it was a Morbid Angel ripoff.
Yeah. And yet it kind of, it doesn't predate it because Morbid Angel was around, but, they're more contemporaries than a ripoff probably.
Yeah.
But
it just like, it wasn't, well, Morbid Angel is one of those few like US bands where we're kind of like, oh, okay, it's cool. Sounds like but they were so like unique, but like somebody from Wisconsin would be like, let's go listen to something from Finland instead.
Sure. Well,
especially if the name was dumb and the cover was bad.
The cover's kind of interesting. This sort of like shitty Eddie kind of character.
It looks like if Vincent Locke, who does all the Cannibal Corpse covers, did like an Eddie.
Yeah,
almost.
I could see that. Yeah.
I do like the logo now.
Yeah, this is one, I was telling Mark that this is up there for me. I really had some kind of big revelations, and I was feeling it coming for a while because I remember, in fact, to kind of date myself, although hopefully by the time this episode drops, because we're recording a couple at the same time, this won't be true. But the last posting that I made for the History of Heavy Metal was this record.
Oh.
Kind of in a strange way. Not that that was like prescient or anything like that. But, and basically what I had to say...
Prophetic.
It's kind of prophetic. There you go. I just said, Morbid Saint Spectrum of Death was a rarity in 1990, a brand new thrash act that kicked ass while many of the older acts were peaking or showing wear and tear, and new vibrant acts were in short order. Lock Up Your Children starts this brutal thrash affair with an amped up Slayer Captor of Sin riff before Pat Lynn's barbaric vocals come in and shine. Lynn and the band remind listeners most obviously of Kreator, as the band has often been coined the American version. Sick breakdowns like the 125 mark help sell this point with aplomb. Hailing from Wisconsin, they never quite launched the way they could have, probably arriving too late for the thrash boom and soon broke up, not releasing a follow-up until 2015.
Which the guys got divorced and they just like, fuck, what are we going to do?
Yeah, we got to throw it back together, man. Got to do it.
Putting the gang back together,
But these guys are like pretty fascinating in terms of like the type of musicians that they've sort of assembled and some of the choices that they make, because clearly like I said, they're Midwestern, so they're not kind of in any of the sort of thrash or even death metal, proto death metal hotbeds, New York or Florida or any of that stuff. And in a lot of ways, I think because they're not attached to any scene, they have a certain amount of freedom to be.
What, you hadn't heard about that Sheboygan scene?
Yeah. Well, the one in Michigan I've heard of, but not. I didn't know there was an equivalent in Wisconsin simultaneously. You got to cross Lake Michigan and really get into the pits. But could you make the argument that when you're not part of you're not San Francisco, you're not New York, you're kind of untethered in a way that gives you a certain amount of freedom? Because to me, this sounds like a merging of Bay Area and Teutonic thrash. And I know we've said that before, but this is almost a perfect marriage. It's almost like, because they can do whatever they want, it allows them to have some death metal elements. It allows them to have Kreator elements and possessed elements. And
I think
they're not tethered to anything.
Yeah, I don't know what the scene was there, but I doubt there was more than a couple bands. Well, at least any that made demos or anything. So I feel like it's the Midwest always has this unique thing where it's, unless you're Motown or Alice Cooper, MC5 or Stooges, usually they're a little behind the times.
Yeah.
So it has a little bit of that Midwest naivete,
because it's almost like it took a while to get here, kind of thing.
Well, from
the coast.
they just heard Kreator and oh shit, this is this is a game changer. Let's introduce this into our repertoire or something.
Sure.
And nobody will know that we're big into Kreator because nobody's heard of Kreator except everybody on the coast has heard of Kreator.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting, though, that they come out, this is not an embryonic record. They come out like kind of fully formed, and if they're going to make kind of one definitive statement, it's a pretty fucking awesome statement,
There's no demos before this then on listed?
Well, they were put together in '84, and then mainly they just kind of started out playing like Judas Priest and Iron Maiden and Black Sabbath covers and shit. But by '85, they kind of started to write some of their own songs. I think they had a tune called Thrashaholic. And then Jay Visser, who is one of the two guitar players along with Jim Fergatis, what did he say? The rumor was always that these guys toured with Death because Griff, or Eric Griff, or also known as Griffey by some people, was the manager of Chuck Schuldiner and Death from like '88 to '92, and I think hasn't he handled some of like the releases of like their live records and some of their catalog? Was he the guy that was trying to put together the Death to All stuff?
I'm
that
not
was
sure.
sort of going on. I know that he's like been sick recently. He's had some kind of like kidney issues or something kind of going on. Because I'm Facebook friends with him, although he doesn't post very often anymore. But he was one of the guys that like co-ran the Milwaukee Metal Fest. I didn't realize. So he was one of the guys that was booking those like late '80s, early '90s, early Milwaukee Metal Fest. Was Griff.
Okay.
So that's kind of where Morbid Saint got put on the map, and I know he brought them into contact with Chuck and Death and things like that. So even though they didn't tour with Death, I think they were like in associations and probably hearing what Chuck was doing and really kind of being inspired by some of that, which probably made their thrash be way more intense than what a lot of other thrash bands would have started out doing.
Did you see that Relapse supposedly reissued Spectrum of Death?
I did see that, and I looked...
When the fuck did that happen?
Exactly. Isn't that weird?
Yeah.
I
said they reunited in early 2010. 2 new songs have been recorded for a reissue of Spectrum of Death by Relapse.
Yep. And I mean, it's weird to me that those we never came across those.
Unless that's like a really recent... Well, no, I mean, that's years ago. So.
It's not Thrashaholic, is it? No, that's an independent release. I don't know. It's kind of weird. Yeah, maybe it could be Thrashaholic. I'm not sure, but it doesn't.
Well, then, like, their Destructive, the last record they did in 2015 is on Weird Face Productions. So
Jesus.
Maybe that was a proposed thing.
Yeah,
for
maybe
Relapse.
They haven't really ever done it. But yeah, they're like I said, just this, right out the gate, strange. And I wrote that what I'm getting from them is you've got Kreator, Pleasure, Pleasure of Violence,
Pleasure to Kill.
Pleasure to Kill. It's a little late. I was thinking of I was thinking of Exodus for a second, but yeah, Pleasure to Kill. Kind of meeting a little bit with Sepultura's Beneath the Remains, kind of meeting with Dark Angel, and kind of meeting with Slayer, Rain and Blood, with a side of Destruction thrown in. And so, like, it sort of fits this weird Venn diagram of a lot of the more extreme, kind of, like you said, proto-death kind of thrash type styles that you got sort of going on. And in a lot of ways, it's maybe one of the only thrash albums I've ever heard that surpasses or moves one level just kind of past Dark Angel in terms of, like, savagery, brutality. Kreator had those moments, Sodom had those moments, certainly Slayer had those moments, but they seem to kind of keep it up across the whole record.
Yeah, it's kind of relentless.
And that's kind of what it sort of impressed me. And you sort of said at first it kind of gave you, you were kind of like beaten down a little bit by it, right?
Yeah, I said it reminded me of when I first, a lot of the US stuff, I remember when I first started getting into like extreme shit, it would, like, the intro would be interesting, like the first like 20 seconds, and then it would just go into a do, like everything kind of sounded the same tempo. And that's kind of how this came across maybe the first 2 listens.
Yeah, and I think the more I started to listen to this, the more I kind of started to find those like different pockets and really sort of appreciate it. It kind of reminds me of like how there was a moment where like Dawn Slaughter Son clicked for me in a way, because there's a lot of sort of like relentless sort of repetition on Dawn Slaughter Son with like the tremola and stuff. But then there's that like moment, almost like when you like finally get like understand like what Neurosis is doing with a lot of their like repetitive stuff. And again, I'm not comparing these guys to those guys, but what I mean is like there's something there. And you know, you look on Metallium and you look, you know, it's got 20 reviews and it's at 95%. And there's, you know, I read so many different people that were like, this is the greatest thrash album I've ever heard. This is the only album that rivals Rain and Blood. Like, so somewhere there's proof in the pudding that people keep kind of going back to this well and talking about this record and bringing it back up, so that it used to be this hidden gem, but I feel like it's in the lexicon a little bit more. Mm-hmm. And I think you know, obviously I think I've listened to it a bunch more times than I think you've had a chance to. And I think there was a point where something just clicked for me. And I think for me, the key was, and this is interesting because I came in when we met up today and you were listening to this and you were kind of like, oh man, the drums are just like beating me down. I was like, what? I was like, that's the secret weapon of this whole record, you know? And so it was cool because Mark and I kind of were seeing it from a different perspective. But Lee Reynolds, like for me, along with the vocalist Pat Lind, who invokes or evokes kind of, you know, Millie from Kreator. That's kind of who he's often compared to. But like Lee Reynolds reminds me of Ventor a little bit. He's a little bit behind.
It's a little sloppy.
He's a little sloppy. He's very primitive. He's savage.
Yes. Primitive is a good way to.
What's that?
Primitive is a good word to represent this entire record, I think.
It's got this, like, it, you know, to me, it's like what, it's like what black metal, some black metal guys, like, want to achieve.
Yeah.
And they often, like, get there in aesthetic, and they get there in certain aspects, but, like, it's, like, got the production value that I want. It's not, like, necro.
It's,
you know,
close.
Primitive is like it's not necro primitive in like a black metal way where it's like just trebly and just like, you know, this like force of static sort of coming at you. To me, it's like the same way that like Philosophum from like Burzum has like this bottom end warmth that still is like primitive, but there's like pockets of like catchy Exodus breakdowns and all these other things that sort of make the primitiveness like have personality. And that's what I think I started to appreciate, like almost like it ages like a kind of fine wine the more you kind of spend time with this record.
On the idea of necro, from a lot of the Fenriz interviews, usually means like not plastic, not clicky.
Yeah.
Like the drums sound like they're recorded live without any anything else going on.
And Eric, you know, Griff basically has come out pretty confidently and said, hey, there's no triggers that were used on this. In a way, like Lee Reynolds, and this is my challenge for you guys especially if you're unfamiliar with Spectrum of Death, he beats the living shit out of this kit. Like this guy should be arrested for fucking manslaughter because he fucking destroys this kit. Like I don't know what this session would have been like. Although I read, I was going to share this because I think this is kind of interesting. So a lot of you guys know Metallium, Metal Archives, and you know, you go through and you're like kind of looking at the reviews, and I had read a reference that Griff had gone on here and noticed like he saw this record and he was like he had forgotten about this record. He's like, oh yeah, I fucking produced this record, blah blah. And so he actually wrote like his own review for it, which I think is cool because it's the guy that kind of is the nucleus of putting this band together and kind of getting them exposed. So that was kind of fun for people that don't want to go and surf to it. He says, okay, so I am the producer of Spectrum of Death. Does that mean that if I say it is one of the greatest thrash metal albums of all time, that I'm patting my own frickin' back? Not necessarily. He says it was the very page Encyclopedia Metallium that coaxed me into reinvestigating an album that I had not heard in years after reading the 3 brilliant reviews of it. So when he wrote this, there were only 3 reviews. It was like 2005 or something like that.
Yeah.
He says, in 1996, a former friend of mine named Joe King, who was looking after lots of my music career shit while I was in Europe, stupidly allowed my beloved possessions to be carted off to the dump. So basically he talks about how he fucking lost this record. He says he bought Morbid Saint, a new copy of it, from Warehouse Records.
Oh.
There was
I looked up the 2012 Relapse put it out.
Did they really?
Yeah.
Huh. And it just does limited print run?
Yeah, I mean, it was records at that point where they might have done 1,500 copies.
Yeah.
Maybe 3,000
I just
tops.
never really saw it.
I don't remember hearing anything about it. It seems like a weird Relapse thing to do. But if they were doing death stuff and, you know, if Eric was helping out with shit, then maybe that was something he threw
That was probably what they did. Yeah, but he goes on, he says, when I made the album with the band, we were trying to be as raw, dirty, evil, and true to the group as was possible. Ultra limited budget, very few guitar overdubbing, and the drums that are nearly precision perfect, and unbelievably, they are almost all first takes. I tried for kick drum cannons, not the cheesy, clicky, high-end kicks prevalent at the time, mostly coming out of a certain Florida studio, popular that year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure that was.
This is evident on Crying for Death, for instance. That's not a fucking drum machine. That's his feet creating a sonic cauldron of explosions. Vocally, there's a lot going on. If you listen... hang on, it cut off a little bit. Oh, there we go. If you listen carefully, there's backwards use of 2-inch tape effects, evil voices that underpin the main vocals, strange digital delay timing and panning. Though it is raw, there is actually much more going on than is at first obvious. Try and listen to this with headphones and for ultimate in brain surgery and demonic possession at the same time. Unfortunately, my life at the time was chaotic. I was an egomaniacal idiot then, and I couldn't help Morbid Saint more than a few gigs opening for Death. Although, Jay Visser, the guitar player, claims that these gigs never happened with Death. So we got to take everything with a little bit of grain of salt of memory.
Well, if anybody knows anything about Death, they were notorious for canceling shit.
Yeah.
So they could have printed up flyers and just never.
And then they maybe
like how many
played.
European tours did Chuck
pull out of and stuff?
Out of, you know?
Yep. So good point. I didn't thought of that. Opening up for Death, who I managed until 1992, and hooking the master tapes up with a Mexican label, Avanzada Metalia, released by them in 1990. Let's see. Is it original? Hardly. Does it take thrash metal in a direction it had never been at the time, late 1988? Not really. Is it groundbreaking? Probably not. But what it is it is a brutal, honest, pure, and perfectly executed evil thrash metal masterpiece by a band who were not posers, but sincere and dedicated masters of mayhem in a state that gave us all Jeffrey Dahmer and Ed Gein, where a fridge full of deer guts is a common sight along with the Pabst Blue Ribbon. Listen to Assassins. When that change comes in at approximately 1 minute and 12 seconds, I always feel as if a metallic army of flesh-eating killers is storming down the hill in front of me, and that's the exact feeling that I had while staring at them playing it through the window from the control room from the studio. The opening part of Crying for Death is so fucking fast and heavy that drummer Lee Reynolds could easily have had a duel to the death with Slayer's Dave Lombardo. When those children's voices, or is it, creep in to your oral cavity towards the end of Lock Up Your Children, chills come down my spine, even though, of course, I know for a fact that it was really just us making those noises. Or the strange voices in Damien, or, well, you get the picture. This CD should sit along with the other thrash gems, and it is a fucking shame someone doesn't re-release it just for the goddamn sake of it.
Well, at this point, it's been reissued by High Roller,
Yep.
Relapse, amongst others.
And this was 2005 when he wrote this, so he was prescient in terms of thinking, what it was going to be down the road.
Yeah, there's 31 different versions.
I don't think he could have anticipated stuff like YouTube, when he wrote that. What that's done to sort of open up the obscure.
Oh, and Century Media put
gems.
it out too.
Did they really?
Yeah. So from, not to give you a full
this is
background, but let's see, a couple Polish things. Those are the 92, but then 2006 No Colors Records, which is a kind of notorious.
Oh, that's weird.
Put it out. Power Play, Relapse, Gates of Hell Productions, Grindcore, Century Media, Pancho Records in Argentina, and then High Roller in Germany put out 6 different versions of it.
Shit.
Some that are going for $119.
Good for you.
But
I'm trying to think what I paid for my copy. It's still on
I found
the way.
one for $20, the Century Media Gatefold.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, I just ordered.
Nice. There you go.
So thanks,
look at that,
patrons.
Blind Illusion. Yeah, patrons are helping us. Yes, to get this stuff. But yeah, I mean, you're like you come right out the gates with this "Lock Up Your Children" song that we sort of started with, and I said it really reminded me like if Gary Holt joined like Sodom on the Agent Orange record. It's just got like those kind of Teutonic Bay Area kind of merging, but it's like the harder side of Bay Area, obviously. Really buzzsaw type guitars all the time, and Captor of Sin is like a good, like that
bass
song
line.
comes up over and over again.
Well, especially the closing track.
Yeah,
We'll get to that.
When we get to that too, which is Beyond the Gates of Hell, one of the most evil fucking thrash songs I think I've ever heard. I guess what it is like it's imagine if like Dark Angel just kept remaking like Haunting the Chapel or something like that. Maybe like obviously the technicality of like Hoglin's like drums are not there. It's more of just like a savage kind of like caveman kind of style. Yeah. But like the sort of like blurred buzzsaw riffing that you get on like Darkness Descends, like songs like Burning of Sodom and things like that. Like it's in these songs built in, but yet there's still that kind of, like I said, that 1984 Slayer, like Haunting the Chapel, that EP. I remember us talking about it on our Metal Blade Slayer episode. Like Show No Mercy is this sort of Nawabum early thrash. I mean, it's kind of got a warmth to it, not in a bad way, but like Black Magic and Antichrist have their kind of evil. They're evil moments, and evil has no boundaries. I mean, it's in the name. Yeah, it has fucking no boundaries. But to me, it's like Lombardo and like everybody stepped up on Haunting the Chapel. Yeah, Captor of Sin and Chemical Warfare. Just like, whoa, that must have been pretty shocking in '84. Like same time Bathory was putting stuff out, Merciful Fate and Celtic Frost. I mean, really, it was like. There weren't many that were doing something that like upfront, and I feel like it captures the spirit of that record. It's not like Hell Awaits with like long kind of. I mean, there are some long songs that we're gonna play, but like Hell Awaits has more. I don't know. How would you explain the differences? Like Haunting the Chapel just like grabs you by the throat in a way, and Hell Awaits like. Lingers and kind of wanders a little bit.
Yeah, and like I don't think they knew how to produce it, right? They didn't know how to capture. Nobody seemed fully confident like they would, a couple years later.
That's true. Yeah. Although for
it was a very, very young band, but I don't think they sounded good, but they weren't Slayer yet. Like that we would, kind of go on to, because like when Lombardo starts to step up his fills and like where he becomes as important as the guitars and vocals. Sure. That's kind of where it really like cements.
But I do know like some real like old school people that feel that like Haunting the Chapel and Hell Awaits like have this like ominousness to them that like the future Slayer records don't really have, that they're almost like too cleaned up or they're too well produced or something like that, which I get, but I mean, I'm a fan of Slayer, like lots and lots of different Slayer, but to me, that's definitely like kind of a tent post is Haunting the Chapel and some of that kind of stuff. And honestly, like it's funny that we both had the same thoughts a little bit about it, that we both kind of said Captor of Sin to each other when we first were talking about this record. But hopefully our fans out there know the At the Gates cover of Slayer's Captor of Sin, because there's something like kind of special about that cover. I don't know. The first time you heard that Slayer cover by At the Gates, what were your thoughts on it? Because I'm about to draw an allusion to what Morbid Saint kind of does.
Yeah, I mean, it was almost more Slayer than Slayer when we heard that, because it was already. I didn't hear that until
like 96, 97 when that Slatanic, whatever it was called, came out.
No, I got it on the.
Or was that on the?
That was on that the promo.
Was on that
tour
Legion?
Promo. Yeah.
Was it? Okay. Yeah.
Captor of Sin, Legion, and then had those 2 Napalm Death tracks on it.
That's right.
So I had that in probably 96.
Yeah,
I think.
That's what I was thinking.
But yeah, that made me like go and re-examine the Slayer song again, I was like, oh.
I mean, Adrian, the way he drums on that song reminds me of what Lee. I forget the drummer's name for a second. It almost feels like Adrian's about to like fall apart and he's gonna like come out of the song. Like he becomes like almost 3D in that. Like he's beating the shit out of the kit and it's like
he's at the edge of his. It sounds like it's gonna go off the rails. Like
yes.
we kind of talked about earlier. Like because that's trying to as a weekend warrior drummer. That's a difficult song to get to that speed.
Sure.
And then the intensity of everything on that song.
Yeah. And I think Adrian has some of that intensity on like Slaughter of the Soul and things like that, which, you know, really has a thrash spirit to it. You could see Slaughter of the Soul as like a kind of,
I think it's a continuation of thrash for sure.
Yeah, and it's almost a continuation of where like bands like this left it in 1990 who were like at the very edge of death metal. You know, like they're kind of right there.
I think the Gothenburg stuff was actually the first thrash revival.
Yeah, that's true.
In a not retro way.
In the non-Bewitched, non-Art Noir kind of. Yeah, that's a good point. Because clearly they were drawing from the German stuff and the British, especially Dark Tranquillity, like Sabbath and some of those kind of bands. And certainly they were all fans of, you know, fucking At the Gates is fans of Slayer. You just hear it all over the place.
Without Slayer, there's no death metal. I mean, Slayer is one of the most important linchpins of this entire.
Yeah, we would not be doing this podcast without Slayer.
No, they're easily in the top 5 metal bands of all time.
Yes, and for some of us, they're right up there with Black
right
Sabbath for me, you know.
And all little cunts who like to spread their legs in the night.
Yes.
This is Captor of Sin.
Captor of Sin.
One of the best live records ever, in my opinion.
Oh, Live Undead?
Yeah.
It's great. Yeah.
Because it's even more unhinged.
It's pretty, yeah.
That's what... Because Captor of Sin didn't grab me as much on the album, and then when I heard Live Undead, I was like, oh, shit.
Yeah.
This is where it's at.
Sure. And that's kind of how I feel with this whole record, is I just don't know... There's moments where I feel like Lee's going to fall apart or Phil's vocals are just going to like, how can he keep up with this pace? You know?
Yeah.
The way we were
pretty breakneck.
We were teasing, you know, Dark Angel for missing like lyrics and shit. But like similar to like when Tom sings on like Jesus Saves or Tom sings on Postmortem, like Phil never loses the pace of this in this record. No matter how fast they're going, like Crying for Death is so fucking fast and like he's just there. Like, and he's pulling the Millie rasp off, and you can still kind of hear what he's saying. Like you can almost like
it's pretty intelligible.
And you know, and the lyrics are, you know, about fucking killing and, you know, just, you know, typical sort of stuff. But I don't know, like to me, those are the two guys that are kind of the MVPs. I didn't mention, I should, Tony Paletti, the bass player. He's keeping it all together. I mean, in a weird way, he's kind of the unsung hero because you can't really hear a lot of the bass. Although there's a few songs you can kind of hear it here and there. But to me, like you have these unhinged drums, you get these twin guitars that are just buzzsawing, and you get this guy screaming over top of it, and he's
basically just kind of playing along with the drums.
He's keeping some warmth, you know? Because there are moments where these pockets of like Exodus kind of warmth, you know, breakdowns sort of happen and they work, you know. Mm-hmm. They're not like on the Blind Illusion, like even the breakdowns there seem kind of like angular. They're not like as warm and inviting as like what you would get in like Master of Puppets or Exodus or, you know.
Yeah.
And so to me it's like got the personality and the savagery of like the far ends of Slayer and Dark Angel, but it also has some of like that Toxic Waltz, you want to like just kind of move moments of Exodus
mosh
records.
And have a good time.
Yeah, so like it's kind of a perfect balance of a lot of things and stuff. Yeah, I don't know. I think that's kind of a good summation of to kind of kickstart this band and kind of get us on our way. So
I had one hot take.
Oh yeah, I like hot takes.
That's completely off.
Because you
have the first when I first heard this. Mm-hmm. The sameness of the drums, at least on the first track.
Oh, this is your hard and heavy take, right? Yeah.
This is, if anybody's familiar with the band Vengeance Rising.
Episode number 150 of Requiem Metal Podcast, you can hear Albert Mudrian from Decibel. We do a whole episode devoted just to
I interview David Vincent and Barney and Nick Holmes and who else was on that?
Was Nicky? I know we...
No. Shane.
I think it was it. I think it was just,
just those four.
Yep.
But yeah, that a notorious, VHS tape that, 50 people really like was a Bible basically. Yeah. But Vengeance Rising was this weird LA Christian thrash band or whatever. I don't even know what you'd call them. They're not really grindcore. They didn't know what to call themselves either in the thing. But the way the dude played drums was just that do 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 like continuously over the whole thing. That was
a lot of beat down.
My first reaction was okay, Vengeance Rising.
And I tried as we listened to it, I was trying to point out some things. I was like, all right, listen to this part because he's doing some kind of interesting things here and stuff. I think the album reveals more as you kind of you got to spend time with it though, because like I said,
I bought it, so obviously I don't hate it.
Yeah, the first couple times I did listen to it, I was like, whoa, like it caught me off guard, but I was kind of like I couldn't differentiate songs. I was just kind of like, what? Well, I was trying to get a hold of this record a bit. So let's get into a trio of tunes. We've got kind of one of there's two kind of long epic tunes on this record, and this is the first of them, Assassin. And you get kind of a cool tune that sort of oscillates with like that kind of sadist, Dark Angel, kind of caffeine metal, sort of speedy anxiety. But it's also got that cool, I say raw spontaneity that like Destruction always had, Destruction always just like felt like I didn't know where the riffs were gonna go or like where the flares of the guitars were gonna happen and stuff. And so it's got some of that. There's a lot of really like interesting like solos and riffs kind of built in. Like it's a 7-minute song, so there's a kind of more going on than meets the eye the more you listen to it. And then of course it's got some nice Haunting the Chapel stuff again.
It's got a good headbanging double bass breakdown spot too. It's
I wrote
kind of
stupid breakdowns. Yeah. And I mean stupid in the most endearing way.
I said, perfect headbang bell hit. I don't know what I meant.
Does he hit like a cowbell?
I don't know what I meant. Huh. Toad. Just my writing.
Trying to understand your own chicken scratch.
Yeah. Quite good double bass.
Yeah. I wrote a cavalcade of riffs, stupid breakdowns, while Pat rasps with catchy bounciness that would make Millie proud.
Oh, also, I think there's some Quorthon on the vocals, too.
Ooh, yeah, you did point that out.
Yeah.
Like late era Quorthon, like Blood, Fire, Death?
No, I would say like Under the Sign.
Under the Sign?
More screamy shit.
Yep. I said chaos abounds, but in that Altars of Madness kind of way. Like it's the train's teetering.
Yeah.
But I think it's going to keep on the fucking tracks, So it's a fun one. It's good stuff. And then we'll get into Damien, which is one of the most kind of fast, high-speed tunes on the record, kind of like Burning of Sodom from Dark Angel. And the opening riff really channels fucking Angel of Death. And
there's the call and response with the drums and guitar.
Yes.
Where they kind of do a little like back and forth with each other.
Fucking way cool. Yeah. I wrote the breakdown at about the 1:15 mark seems fucking cliche, but it's so much conviction and it's so pure that it sheds like all the fucking naysayers. You know what I mean? Like they do very predictable things, but it like all works. And that's what I think I like about it is it's like it's like Eric Grief was saying, it's not fucking innovative, but it just does everything it wants to do the way it wants to fucking do it, So lots of tremolas too. Lots of tremolo riffs and shit going on in Damien. So, and then we'll end with Crying for Death, which is one of my fucking favorite tunes that we'll talk a little bit more when we get back. So let's get to Assassin, Damien, and Crying for Death. Crying for Death, Damien, and Assassin. These are shorter, easier to read song titles than some of the previous episodes. I'll say that. Yeah. So it's kind of nice. But Crying for Death, man, that's a special one. Mark and I just had to listen to the beginning of that just so I could remember how badly he's fucking assaulting the kit there. And you had an interesting insight to we were trying to figure out who this guy fucking was.
Oh, he seems like he's trying to prove his athleticism on the drum kit, that he has to hit is just as hard, a jock dude that's trying to fit in with the cool kits or something, or he just got, or some rich kid that his parents got him this unbelievable drum set and he's really got to prove himself to his band. But
who knows? Maybe he's rich by Sheboygan standards. Ooh, yeah, which who knows what that means?
His dad owns a deer processing plant or something.
And work with me here in terms of what I'm trying to say, because I think you might agree with this when I make this kind of connection. To me, his approach to the drums is similar to Nick Holmes' approach to vocals on Gothic. Nick Holmes fucked his voice up because of that record. You know what I mean? Because he was pushing beyond what he probably should have done.
And he's using his throat instead of his,
So he's doing all these it's raw and real, but that's the power of that record is you can feel that. Oh fuck,
the enthusiasm, this can only be captured once. It's not like something you could go out and do every night.
I don't know what's the next record. I don't know what the follow up to Spectrum of Death is. They've done everything they needed to do. They've checked every cliche off of thrash. Unless they do a full-on fucking death metal record, nothing a lighter version of this is going to be who cares? Do you know what I'm saying? Because they're not really innovating. They're not introducing anything brand new to the genre, but they're taking all the ideas that already are floating out there, but pushing them to the the very limits of what you can do and still sound good and want to listen to.
Yeah.
So it's like weird to me. Like and maybe that's kind of, what Nick did with his vocals on Gothic too, almost in a way, like he had to change, for physical reasons and other things.
Well, even with Lost Paradise, he did the same.
Yeah.
It wasn't quite as guttural, but he actually sounds better now.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. Like he learned how to do it properly from his diaphragm instead of his throat.
Yeah. And maybe like Lee takes some lessons and becomes more like Lombardo kind of fills and technical stuff. But, there's something to be kind of lost with that, in a way. But this is the song that made me think about like this guy, Lee Reynolds, is, fucking assaulting the kid. Like it's manslaughter. What he's doing is wrong by sort of nature. But did
you listen to Destruction System at all?
The new record?
Yeah, 2015
Newish
record.
I did not.
I'm just curious what.
Yeah, maybe we'll listen to it in between when we get to the next set because I'm kind of curious. Like, what is it? Lee on it? The same guys?
Let's see.
If it's not Lee Reynolds drumming, I want to fucking listen to it, man.
It is.
Oh, okay. I'm in. I'm on board. But what do you think 20 years off is going to do to the guy? I'm not sure.
I don't know, because like with Memoriam and Darkened, like Andy Whale plays as good or not better than what he was 25 years ago, just as fast. And
that's true. When did he leave Bolt Thrower? After Fourth Crusade?
Yeah.
So that was like 94. So yeah, you're right.
Yeah. He's tired of touring and wanted to have a family.
Been a while. Yeah. So, yeah, but there's like, there's something cool at the very end of that song too, Crying for Death, that I wrote. That's this kind of real subtle moment. I love the release at the end when like he's been like pummeling and it relents for this like little 5-second reprieve. And then like our cool, like catchy thrash riffery sort of like comes in for just like 4 or 5 seconds. And then Lee just hits this cymbal. And then that's it. It's cool. It's like, again, one of those things like I remember, I've told this story so many times, so I apologize to long-term fans, but to new people, it's a new story for you, right? The first time I heard Rain and Blood, we were sitting in a buddy of mine room in 9th grade, and we had heard Season of the Abyss, like the song, we had heard War Ensemble, and we bought Rain and Blood from Columbia House on a whim because we had heard this reputation. It's the best Slayer. So we're like, oh, it's got to be like the song Season of the Abyss, but like better. And we put this fucking tape on, and we were just like, Angel Death was cool. Like, we were like, whoa, but it scared the shit out of us. And then it proceeded to be 8 fucking songs that I could not tell apart. The only part I could tell was this like breakdown where he goes, enter to the realm of Satan.
Yeah.
And then the opening of Jesus Saves. I was like, oh, okay. That like it like breathed for a second. And until you get to fucking Raining Blood, like every song sounded exactly the same. I couldn't tell when one song began and ended because I wasn't trained for it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
And so like
it's to me, a very common occurrence.
The more I listen to Rain and Blood, the more I like it's like At the Gate Slaughter of the Soul. It sounds very samey at times.
Yeah.
Until you like break it down, you kind of appreciate these little subtle things that are happening in each song. It's not like
Slaughter's almost more digestible, I think.
Oh yeah, I think so. It's warmer than in certain ways. And to me, like the more I listen to Spectrum of Death, the more I notice those moments a little. Where it's like these little subtle like him just like deciding to like just come in with one little cymbal hit first. It's just really kind of endearing.
Like, no, Lee, we're done.
Yeah, we're done. Yeah. So the rumor with this album is that they took the Lock Up Your Children demo from 1988 and they just basically released this they like changed the production a little bit. Slight change in pitch, slight change in tempo, but they didn't really re-record anything. And I don't know if I believe that rumor. I don't know.
Well, we listened to stuff back to back.
I was listening. Yeah, we were trying to tell if they were. I mean, there's a difference, obviously, in sound quality.
But one just sounds like the demo just sounds muddier to me. I don't know how you can, by changing the pitch, doesn't add clarity to sound.
But like, did that demo we're about to play a demo version of Burned at the Stake, so people can maybe kind of hear what the original formation of this type of sound sounded like. But did it sound like that recording became this recording with production?
It didn't to me.
Okay, so you think they went back in the studio and re-record it, maybe?
unless there's like, because that's, I mean, this is probably, a demo record on a 4-track.
Yeah.
It sounds better than a 4-track in my, limited experience with this shit, but especially at 1990, like there's no like computer trickery so everything would have been some type of like physical thing they would have had to do.
So this says that it was recorded and mixed. This is the Lock Up Your Children demo in September of 88 for Edge Entertainment. It was released as 400 copies on cassette. It was recorded at Opus recording in Gurnee, Illinois. Good old Gurnee. And it says, again, this is Metal Archives. It says, these are the exact same songs as found on Spectrum of Death, but released separately before the band was signed to a label. The only difference is a slight change in pitch and tempo. So it's hard for me to read between the lines whether it was re-recorded, but I don't disagree with you. It does sound like it was. I reached out to Eric Grief and didn't get a firm response back from him.
You got a picture of his cat.
I did find out about his cats. So I have a feeling he was talking to two people at once, and he mistook me for who he was also talking.
Or maybe that's the secret.
Or maybe he
gave you a clue that is just...
Yeah, maybe it's fucking... Yeah.
He's playing in the nose and
he's Dan Browning me.
Yeah.
There's a symbiology somewhere in there.
I'm sure.
And then, so then I look at Spectrum of Death, and it says that this was recorded in Opus in Gurnee, Illinois. So I don't know. It's like, I just, if any of you know, let us know, because that's why I'm decided, like, hey, let's listen to a demo version, because I want you guys to make a decision.
Well, maybe my other idea was that the demo we listened to was like which wouldn't have been completely uncommon, as a 3rd or 4th generation copy, so it like degraded a little bit in sound quality.
That's true.
That could be, but I don't know how easy it is just to like pitch something up.
Yeah.
And have it not sound completely unnatural.
And I guess the reason I'm interested is this,
and why too. Like,
yeah. No, you're spot on there. But I think the reason I'm kind of interested in this mystery is because if this was fully formed the way it seems to be in '88, does that change your perception of this band? Because '88's like Death Leprosy. There's not a lot in that landscape. You know what I mean? I'm kind of curious what your thoughts are on something like that, and us being kind of a historical metal contextual podcast.
But I think that throws it more in the proto death metal category, or extreme, because I mean, Death still has, at that point, still had like some thrash
for sure
bits kind of in there.
Early Altars did too.
Yeah. But this kind of the extremity of it. I mean, it's like, when did that Slaughter record come out? Was that around the same time?
Strapato?
Yeah.
86, 87.
Okay.
Somewhere around there. Yeah, Canada.
But see, that seems more, proto death metal than thrash too. Mm-hmm. It's just like a weird, even, Destruction, I guess, is considered a thrash band, but
early Sodom's like black metal-y kind of too.
It's just a weird, I mean, it's just an era where things were changing, and journalism didn't really have titles for everything yet. I
mean, you already had like Celtic Frost records, and so I'm not like saying Morbid Saint was reinventing the wheel, but it's interesting that they were kind of maybe more cutting edge than people thought, because this record didn't see the light of day till 1990.
I mean, that's a lot of those types of things, like with Horrified, recorded in 86 and didn't come out till 89. Like, that's in those years, that's a huge, long time to wait, and like, imagine like how different you were as a kid in 3 years. Oh my God, it's crazy. Yeah, how your taste had changed. It's insane.
And stuff. Yeah, and especially like music back then, the way it sort of shifted. Well, like, look at Bonded by Blood, which is kind of a companion piece to some of this. I mean, Bonded by Blood, I think, was originally supposed to come out in like late 83 or early 84, but there was all kinds of issues. It didn't see the light of day till 85. By 85,
it was kind of old hat.
Yeah, I mean, Ride the Lightning had come out a year before, and like Haunting the Chapel had come out, and Hell Awaits was out, and it's like
everything had already gone that next level. Yeah, and this is just kind of like,
and you kind of feel bad because how influential Exodus were to everyone, and they just couldn't fucking get. I mean, look at Dismember, right? I mean, Dismember kind of was right contemporaries with Entombed, but like, wasn't there a big delay with like Everflowing Stream where it didn't?
Oh, there's
out
all the
when it was
shit with
supposed to?
like Carnage started first, and then they're on Earache, and then fired. Who was even fired from the band? The lineup, basically Micah Mott was the only one that left.
Yeah,
and then they went on to to form Dismember, but
then
still,
I feel like they recorded like Everflowing, but there was like some delay in even getting it out.
I think it was about a year.
Yeah. But like, think of where like death metal was in like '89 versus early '91.
Yeah,
and they seem like, oh shit, well, Clandestine's coming out now, the second
Yeah.
Entomb. You know what I mean? It's like, and people always looked at Dismember as like almost inferior to Entomb because they were just like a couple years behind. But I see them as equals.
Yeah,
in a lot of
I
ways.
almost see Dismember is more, at least like Neverflowing Stream is almost more death metal than
for sure. Yeah,
than Entombed.
Yeah, I don't
like
disagree.
That buzzsaw guitar is like nobody got it better than that first record.
Yep. Yeah, I mean,
and you've got like two like drummer songwriters too, which is an interesting and really good friends.
Yep.
With Nikki and Fred, but
yeah,
I'd never known outside of Anthrax another drummer that was like writing so much, guitar riffs and shit. And Nikki did all the leads on that first record. Did
Chris write a lot of stuff for Autopsy, or were the brothers doing some of that? I just don't know who the primary like songwriters for.
I've
Autopsy
never seen it
were.
broken down for Autopsy.
Yeah,
but Chris plays guitar.
Yeah, that's true.
So I mean, he plays guitar, and
maybe he was doing some songwriting for him as well.
That fucking punky band that he's in, I can't think what the hell it's called, but Violation Wound.
Oh, okay.
He plays guitar and sings in that.
Huh. Yeah, I didn't know.
So I mean, and Ken Owen.
Yeah.
And Carcass came up with a lot of riffs, and then Bill tried to figure out what the fuck he was doing.
Yeah. I'm sure King was writing a lot of stuff for Deceased when he was behind the kit too.
I would think so.
So, yeah, just an interesting thought.
There's another show to do.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Chris Cornell started as a drummer with Soundgarden in the early years before he moved.
And he was a guitar player as well.
Yep. Yeah. Never the lead player, I don't think. I think he was always just kind of rhythm and stuff.
That's kind of all Soundgarden really was, but they weren't really big.
Kim did some cool, interesting leads from time to time, but the Soundgarden's such an interesting that they're predictable and then very their
first couple of years are
musical choices,
pretty crazy.
Yeah. So this next set, like I said, we're gonna play you a demo version of "Burn at the Stake," which is of course re-recorded or retooled, if you will, for Spectrum of Death. Then we've got another pair of tunes from Spectrum of Death, and we have the title track. And the title track's really interesting. I just wrote that it was eerie, kind of out of key. It's just really an intro into Scars, but you connected it to a show we did more recently.
Emperor's Anthems.
Yeah. Like
it really has that vibe to it to me.
Like a black metal kind of intro or something just kind of otherworldly almost.
Yeah.
But I don't know if
Anthems
it's
was like
tape speed that they're messing with here, or if it's an out-of-tune kind of guitar that they're like running.
Well, if they were fucking with pitches and stuff, maybe it just sounds like a warped tape to me. But
and it's uncomfortable.
It works
it's unsettling
really
in a
well,
cool way. It's only 40 seconds long, but it just sort of does the trick to like palate cleanse, I think. Mm-hmm. Especially coming, because in the real track listing, this would come right after "Crying for Death," which is a song where Lee beats the fuck out of his kit. So you almost like need like a breather, and then you get right into Scars. But I'm sorry, I cut you off. You were about to say something about the Spectrum of Death tune.
I think that was basically about it.
All right. Sorry.
I was having some belching.
Oh.
I was trying to hold in.
Yeah, we've been eating Mexican food and barbecue chicken pizza, and
I got some whiskey and a couple beers.
So we're fully functional right now. And then we're going to come out of it with Scars, and Scars is the other epic tune on the record, and this is to me the most Bonded by Blood kind of Exodus type song on the record. I said it's Bonded by Blood with surgical rolling thunder firebombing, thanks to Lee Reynolds' incredible Hall of Fame drum performance, especially this song. He does a lot of really fucking amazing start, stop, and time changes. And I said, this is where Tony Paletti, the bass player, really sort of keeps a cool, like, fat bottom kind of bass performance. And in particular, this is the part I showed you when we were kind of hanging out. There's a cool like beat down solo kind of thing that happens from like the 4.5 minute mark for about a minute.
Yeah.
Before this sort of Exodus kind of like headbang mosh riff comes in and just like beats, like it's just fucking, I said it murders you back into the back row, not just the front row, fucking back row, as the band then find another brilliant, dumb, oscillating, percussive groove that Kreator found on Coma of Souls or that Death Angel found on board.
And I would even go as far as to say an obituary, kind of like a
little bit of the yo, that just like that pocket where you just
I was raising my hand as in what rap music people did in the
like
90s.
Yes. Back the fuck up. Yes.
Yeah.
Or like when you're sitting there, it's in the Dr. Dre Nothing But a G thing where he's doing this and the lowrider's bouncing as if he's yo-yoing the car.
Does that, the hand thing, does that come from the lowrider?
I hope so.
Okay. I don't know what if you
my
could say
low ride culture knowledge is pretty minimal, unfortunately. We need to spend more time in junkyards and talk to people.
When I was in high school, there was a dude that had a lowrider.
Really?
Yeah. I don't remember what his name was, but I think he was a little older. He used to hang out at the pool hall.
Oh, Rackham.
Yeah.
Yeah, the rough part of Mount Pleasant.
Yeah, that's where I saw a guy beat a guy's head into the bumper of a car.
Whoa.
The guy deserved it. He was a prick.
At least he deserved it.
He did.
That's all I care.
His nickname was Basketball Head.
Oh shit! Because of that moment?
No.
Because of the bouncing off the.
Because his head was so big.
Oh, is that dramatic irony?
It seemed, in retrospect. What do you do if your name's Basketball Head, but beat your head against
bounce
something
your head
a
off
couple times?
Fucking some object of some sort?
Never saw that guy again.
Yeah, that's funny.
He looked like Hervé Villachez, but like,
oh no,
if you just like pulled
just
him
stretched him out,
a little bit, yeah, same proportions.
I'm trying to think who was stretched out. Hervé Villachez.
Well, not even stretched out, but like the same proportions, just not a little person.
Okay, gotcha. The most interesting thing I think I learned about a weird car from an older person in high school was my freshman year. I think in Spanish class there was a senior hillbilly named Rich Dunslager.
It's a good name.
Who was a year below you in high school. The Dunslager. He had a nice blonde shit lip and had a mullet and wore No Fear shirts.
Okay,
and
that was a lot of people.
Yeah, he was pretty fascinating as a freshman to like look at this dude that looked like.
Was he a Mountain Dew spit chewer?
Yeah, he kind of looked like Todd from Beavis and Butthead, the guy who drove the Camaro around and shit. That's who he looked like. But he was talking about how he had souped up his fucking truck, which was raised off the ground, and he had storage containers to hide beer, so that when the cops pulled them over, it was like hiding drugs, and it would be like hidden under his truck. And I was just like, freshman, just taking it all in. Like, oh, cool, man. Why don't you just? And I don't know if I thought he was cool, but like, else. He was a football player. I don't know. He was just a really interesting guy as a freshman to like study this like redneck hillbilly senior guy, because it was so far from my culture in a weird way.
Well, if anybody's on Facebook, I'm hanging out with my dad. Look up Rich Dunslager.
Yeah, find out what Rich Dunslager's doing these days.
If he's still alive.
So, yeah, I hope he's like doing some like some Burt Reynolds like running Coors beer across the nation or something like that.
I think he might be like a salesman at like a Four Winds boat dealership, or maybe a ATV salesman or something.
Okay, yeah, Kawasaki's, and Hondas. Yeah, we're running a Columbus Day sale, liquidation. Fucking Kawasaki's got to go. So yeah, without much more ado, we've got the Burn at Stake demo version from '88 from the Lock Up Your Children demo. Then we've got the aforementioned Spectrum of Death title track, and then we'll end with Scars.
It's a one way, compensate, push it like a wave. Take a fucking life, I'm a natural fish. That's you, I'm thinking they can't be
That was Scars, Spectrum of Death, and then we had the demo version of Burned at the Stake. And I didn't really say too much about Burned at the Stake, but I had a couple kind of interesting notes. It sort of opens with a Lesson in Violence Exodus riff a little bit there. And it kind of has a lot of possessed moments kind of going on in terms of like the way that Possessed sort of approached kind of thrash, you know, how they were sort of thrashy with some of that kind of stuff. And so we're going to sort of close things out here, but as I've been doing with these kind of shorter episodes, my kind of factoid sort of thing, I've talked about like Thrash's relationship with hair metal and the impact that like Ronald Reagan had on sort of the lyrics of the 80s. And this comes from the Terrorizer Thrash Special Part 2 from...
Did you find that on eBay?
Yeah, it was this May of 2003, issue 109. And it's the...
Nick Terry still the editor at that point?
Perhaps. Let me look. Is Nick Terry... I don't even know where the fuck I'd find out.
Usually it's the... first couple pages.
Yeah, you think. Okay, let's see. Damien.
Oh.
I don't know who Damien is.
I don't either.
Let me see here. Contributors, publisher, Ian Glasper as a staff writer. We know some of the contributors.
Yes. The metal journalism people are almost like the government. It's a lot of the same people from the last
Kevin Stewart
25 years.
Kevin Stewart Pankow.
Yeah.
Also Nathan T. Burke, who wrote for Eclipse.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Anyways, Damien. I don't know. That's all I'm getting here.
That's fine.
But it's the Nuclear Wear Survival Guide to Thrash. In thrash fashion. Hair, in a word, long. All right. Pretty simple. Tight stretch jeans, often embellished with inky, hand-drawn band logos. Tight stretch jeans were standard issue for the well-turned-out thrasher. Some fashion victims wore jeans so tight they would constrict the blood behind their knees and gonads, but in their carefree days, before we were aware of these deep vein thrombosis and low sperm count, who cared?
Exactly.
Then we got white trainers, which in England... They're called trainers, Mark.
Yeah, tennis shoes.
Exactly. See?
Well, they call them sneakers.
Sneakers, yeah.
Tennis shoes is a very 70s term, I think.
Yes. Trainers. I always liked the trainers. Below the stretched jeans loomed the enormous white trainers. High T was the most popular brand, and the fatter the tongue, higher the high top, and bigger the bouncier the shoe, the better.
Yeah.
Not only did fat trainers keep a thrasher steady on his feet when caught in a mosh, it also allowed him to remain fleet of foot when encountering hostile casuals who branded him a sissy for having silky hair longer than their girlfriends.
Oh.
Then we got leather jacket. You probably knew that one. All right. Painstaking hours were spent reproducing favorite band logos and album artwork on black leather jackets. Some were truly spectacular. Some of them were cack-handed botch jobs. That's got to be a British term, right?
Yeah.
Like chuffed.
I have.
You ever had a cack-handed botch job? It sounds like something that I've seen in a porno before.
There's a botched plastic surgery show from the UK that sounds like something they might have talked about. Ben Ash, who we mentioned in the previous episode, he gave me a dictionary of British slang.
Oh, nice.
In the other room.
We should look up cack-handed. I lived in England, but I don't remember that one. Suddenly, bedroom art geeks with the patience and talent to reproduce popular album covers were highly sought-after commodities. Then we've got the sleeveless denim jacket with patches. The main difference, the patches were now emblazoned with cool new bands like Celtic Frost, Metallica, and Slayer instead of dinosaurs like Black Sabbath and Uriah Heep.
Yeah.
Then we've got the band t-shirt, the universal garment. For many, the first thing to do after acquiring a new tee was to grab the scissors and immediately hack off the sleeves and neck. Did you ever do that?
No, I wait until I get holes in the armpits, then I cut the sleeves off.
Then you do the hack job?
Yeah. Usually that takes about 10 years.
In an instant, the shirt resembled a neutered rag. Not only did this make it easy to nonchalantly display new tattoos,
no,
it was also convenient for showing off mosh pit bruising and battle scars. Arguably the most de rigueur and memorable of accessories was what? What's your guess that I'm about to reveal?
Of Thrashness?
Yeah.
Wristbands?
Ooh, it's coming, but it's not that one.
Okay.
Bullet belts.
Yes.
The bullet belt.
I did buy a bullet belt from the Army Surplus store.
I've always wanted a bullet belt. So
they're pretty easy.
Christmas is coming up soon, my friends. Yeah, so somebody send me a bullet belt out there. You guys are all creative people.
I'm sure they have them at what's that mall store? Does Hot Topic still exist?
Oh, it might. Yeah, I'll even take a Hot Topic one as long as I don't have to pay for it. So
I think I had a 50 caliber machine gun one. I had to use like a wire to hold it together. It wasn't.
Well, now that if somebody has some good leather pants too, because the ones that Mark gave me were fucking awesome, but they ripped pants right down the ass. And so I have the leather jacket. I just don't. I lack the leather pants.
Maybe you could go the Sepultura route and just get some AA batteries. And tape them together.
I could do the battery thing, but how do I replace good leather pants? So, but yeah,
I would go back to the Macomb County Goodwill where I got.
Is that where you got them?
Yeah, and the vest.
Well, that vest still comes in handy. The bullet belts came in two popular models, the empty half bullet case and the long-tipped bullet case versions. Whichever style it was worn slung low on the hips, and it weighed a ton. True heavy metal needed truly heavy armor.
Yeah, I had no tips on my bullet belt, empty casings.
Then you got your studded wristband, as you said before.
Okay.
Standard clobber. Kerry King liked them, so did we. Square studs, spiky studs, double buckle, triple buckle, nails. The combinations and permutations were endless.
I made some nail ones before out of old belts.
Do you really?
I did.
How brutal are those?
They're pretty cool. I took this was in the year 2000.
Okay. We were hanging out then. I don't remember you making these.
When I lived in that house on
Lansing Street, right?
No, the house I lived in Susie. The
Elizabeth Street or whatever. Or
I bought some belts at the thrift store, and I'd made like a big neck collar with the huge things and like the Kerry King armband. And
oh shit!
I think I just did it for Halloween.
Okay, how did I miss that?
And then I made some again when I was living with you, and I did my photo shoot where where the leather pants were bought and the vest. And
I wonder if you made those when I was in Italy. That 6 months I was gone. Maybe that's when I missed it.
That could be.
Yeah. Then we got two more. We got shorts, now associated with surfers and skaters. Baggy Bermudas had a brief moment of glory as part of the daring thrash fans ensemble. Anthrax followers preempting Timmy Mallet. What the fuck that is.
That's British, dude.
Tended to bounce around in nauseatingly gaudy, multicolored versions, while the less confident, short-wearing thrash fan could be found sporting a version made of sweatpant. Oh, Jesus, I can't read. Sweatpant fabric emblazoned with their favorite band's name running down the leg.
Those are also now a thing.
The thrash shorts again?
Or the sweatpants.
Oh, yeah.
The printed sweatpants that was like a huge, like Blue Grape merchandising, if you remember them. Fuck. Get yourself some Sepultura sweatpants.
I would wear Sepultura sweatpants nowadays.
I would too.
Yeah.
Or the shorts. Fuck, I'd buy some of those.
Hell yeah, I'd wear those old like yellow Anthrax shorts that like Dan Spitz would wear on stage and shit like that. But and then last but not least is the baseball cap. For a short period, it became acceptable to wear a baseball cap with the brim flipped up, although it actually made the wearer look like an inbred moron. This fashion, sported by trendsetters like Suicidal Tendencies' Mike Muir, was incredibly popular.
Yeah.
Often there was a message scrawled underneath the hat brim. Once again, Anthrax fans led the goofy fashion stakes, most often writing "not" on their caps. Oh, how we laughed.
There was a thing for a while that I don't know if you remember. The painter's hat was a popular thing. The one, basically that sort disposable.
That kind of popped up.
Yeah, you could do a flip bill with that.
I more remember the painter hat from the Jesus Jones.
See, we were wearing it before the Jesus Jones video.
Yeah. But that's kind of where I remember it. And maybe did not Corey Glover, Vernon Reed, he wore it in the Cult of Personality video in '88. I feel like he had like a painter.
I think that's where I got it from.
Okay.
Because I was a big Living Color fan.
Oh yeah, great.
But I couldn't pull off the shorts, but I wanted
the black part,
the fucking dreadlock.
That's the other part about trying to pull off the Living Color.
That's true.
Unless you're into blackface, which in '88 you probably could have got away with.
Ted Danson did it, and with
just don't post those pictures on the internet.
Yeah, and then you're fine.
But
yeah, I asked my dad to take me to it was like Living Color and somebody else. He's like, no.
You know what? That
But
probably would have been a really
would have
cool
said
show.
no to any band I would have asked him
true.
to take me to.
Yeah.
And it was in Detroit,
Oh.
which still his last experience was in the '68 riots.
Oh. Well,
So he still had hard feelings, I guess.
that'll shape you in a weird way. Yeah.
And I've still never seen Living Color.
Yeah.
I guess they don't really tour very much.
There's I don't know if did I ever tell you about, I think it was a year ago, there was like a weird super group that was put together with Corey Glover and George Lynch.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
I
couldn't
remember if I played that for you. Yeah. But yeah, anyways. Vernon Reed's, he's fun on Twitter. Yeah,
I think Vernon Reed's probably he's the secret sauce of that band.
I mean, he was the real deal. Incredible.
Glover's he's a great singer, but I think, what was the drummer's name too?
You got me on that.
He was
one.
pretty.
I only know
he's
those
pretty
two
incredible.
guys.
Yeah, that's just one of those weird moments in time.
Yeah, yeah.
Where that, like, if that came out now, I'd probably not be interested at all. But
yeah, it's like that and like Real Thing from Faith No More.
Yeah,
we're like kind of these weird 88, 89 kind of anomalies.
Yeah,
you know? It's kind of when metal needed something a little bit more deeper in the mainstream because the Bon Jovis and that stuff was sort of like wearing thin. But like they also weren't quite ready for like harder stuff other than like Metallica 1. You know, that was like the one exception in that era. So,
but yeah, that got me more interested in that type of stuff.
I was pretty fascinated by like the Epic video. Like, I just was like, what is this? Yeah, like I would just stare.
I even thought like my parents gave me a bunch of shit from when I was a kid, like school projects and stuff that they kept. And there's what the fuck is that called? Zombie Eaters. I wrote the lyrics for that for an English poetry project.
Yeah.
Got an A.
Nice. Yeah, I think I've talked about the poetry project where I included Angel of Death and stuff because mine was on like war and the effects of war.
Yeah.
And so I had some cool stuff in there. So we're going to close out here with the track that closes the whole record, Beyond the Gates of Hell. And there's so much Captor of Sin and like kind of throat grabbing Slayer destruction that it's really the
lead in the beginning of Captor of Sin.
It's
maybe a note off.
Yep. And that song kind of serves as really a template, like we said, for the whole album's construction. And when it finally kind of settles back and into this kind of like mid-pace riff pattern, like Pat is like in his primal element with his vocals here. I mean, I said he evokes demons only seen in early death metal. I mean, he's as like savage vocally here. Like you said, like he's got some Bathory-isms. There's a lot of like, it's hard for me to say, is this 100% thrash? This song kind of begs to differ a little. And there's even like a little part in the middle that reminded me of kind of like Mike Browning era Morbid Angel. And you said Mike Browning kind of was the drum style a little bit reminding you of the savagery, you know.
Mike Browning, it killed him that he could never do fucking rolls.
Yeah.
It was all just very fucking straight up and down until he did like some Rototom shit in Nocturnus, which is just kind of obnoxious, but
that's kind of what makes Nocturnus kind of like endearing, though, is they sort of were.
Well, I even said this sounds kind of like it's from Florida.
Yeah. Yep, that's the Morbid Angel Disease. Like a lot of psychotic shredding, kind of like what you would hear on Morbid Angel, Nocturnus kind of records too. I just said my jaw's agape at this point. Like I'm fucking fully on board, as I hope all of you are. There's just it's a great record, and I'm happy to expose this to people that maybe don't know it as well. So yeah, I'm glad that you're warming up to it the more that you know it as it kind of permeates you. I think once you get
Midwest
vinyl,
love.
What's that?
Some Midwest love.
It's some Midwest love, man. And I wish that Eric Grief had not just told me about his cats. It would have been interesting to get some insight into.
Looks like he's got a great Gardner White couch there too.
Yeah, it was good. Thank you for that, Eric. So if you do listen to this episode, I do appreciate you reaching out with some pictures of your cats and telling me about their names and things. But
at least it wasn't a dick pic.
Yeah, that's true. It could have been way worse. It could have been a lot worse. But yeah, so this is we're halfway there with this 10-week journey. And
would you say whoa?
What?
We're halfway there.
Oh, we're living on a prayer, Mark. Yeah. We are. Actually, at this point, we are. It's 2 a.m. So it's a miracle that we're duct taping, our minds into, real sentences here.
Yeah, you've been up almost 24 hours.
Yeah. It's been a long day.
So at least you didn't have to use your AK.
Oh, jeez. Mark's hitting me with the deep cuts tonight.
The very, very deep cuts. Completely.
We'd be remiss if we didn't tell the people who are fascinated by the narrative story of what we discovered after that last Talkset. So we went on a little Facebook journey and we found Rich Dunslager. And Rich Dunslager is the second, yeah. Richard J. Dunslager the second. So you can also look him up if you like. But he's exactly what we thought he would be.
Yeah,
just an older version. He's not selling Kawasaki's though, Mark.
No, I think he works for a concrete company.
Yeah, he's working for a guy I graduated high school with, Lalone Trucking, I believe. Hey, nothing wrong with that. My dad's a truck driver, but it's none of these people left where I last saw them.
Yeah.
So not surprising.
It's like a moment in time. These guys they stay.
And he's got a goatee and a mullet.
Dick Target, as I like to call it.
Dick Target.
It's where the penis goes.
And this episode really does go out to Rich Dunslager. And so maybe we'll add some tribute.
Maybe next time he goes to the Five Finger Death Punch concert.
I think. Yeah.
Branch out a little bit. There's more out there, dude. There's good stuff out there. You could be listening to this. You could be listening to Morbid Saint.
You could be listening to more. I feel like Rich Dunslager would have kind of dug on some Morbid Saint.
I think he'd like to show up all of his friends at the Lalone Trucking. Yep. Larry Lalone Trucking.
Larry Lalone and Wade Lalone.
Yeah,
Larry Lalone. Larry Lalone drives for Wade Lalone's Trucking.
Exactly.
And that's really the connection between all these episodes. We can draw a line through Possessed, Blind Illusion, and
Rich Dunslager.
And Rich Dunslager from Mount Pleasant, Michigan. Actually, I'm sorry, Rosebush, Michigan.
Rosebush, yes.
Yeah, he's a Rosebush boy.
The taint of Mount Pleasant.
Oh, yes. What's Shepherd then? Taint. I'm trying to.
Belly button.
What's that? Belly button?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Shepherd's more quaint. It's not as trash.
It's like the belly button that you kind of sometimes like to finger the lint out of.
Maybe the Happy
Trail.
Trail.
Feel like a sense of satisfaction when you pull some
the Happy
lint
Trail
out.
To maybe Lansing's the belly button.
Okay, I'll take that.
I don't know, but then it makes the whole world upside down.
Yeah,
which
that's
I guess
weird.
it is.
Lansing would probably be like more like ball sackish then. If I'm going
Flint.
Geographically. Yeah.
Flint and Saginaw, the ball
Flint's
sack.
more of like, Flint and Saginaw are more like kneecaps. They're just kind of like there. I don't know. I don't really have much use or like, I've got no negativity in either of those places.
Well, no, that Flint's just a trash pit.
That's
that
true.
Nobody wants to live there anymore.
But hey, repulsion.
Yes. And the
girl
dating's from Flint.
Yeah. All right, before we go like the drummer completely off the fucking rails.
Before it's 3 hours of a high school reunion.
Exactly. Rich Dunslager, this one's out for you. But yeah, so thank you, patrons. We're looking for new patrons. If you'd like to become a patron and listen to some of the bonus episodes, we have put up the Flotsam and Jetsam episode. Probably the next time Mark and I get together, we'll record the next Thrash patron show for our loyal listeners and our loyal patrons. There's also a ton of other stuff that you can get up there. We did a 2-part 1995 episode. We've done episodes where we ramble on
6 hours worth right
about we ramble on about our favorite Metallica record. So it's a lot more like this. It's a little more loose and conversational, like this last Talkset was about Rich Dunslager. So check us out on requiempodcast.com, where you can link to Patreon from there, or you can go directly to patreon.com/requiempodcast. You can check us out on Twitter, on Instagram. Facebook's probably the one I use the most, although I'm not on there as much anymore. You can also check out the History of Heavy Metal the History of Heavy Metal page and like it and get the updates from that when I start updating it, which hopefully will be.
You could make very short podcasts just reading the descriptions.
I know. Yeah, that's a thought. The guy from Gimme Radio, I still got to get in contact with him when life gets a little simpler. Might be a retirement plan. But yeah, that was always kind of maybe an idea of doing like a history kind of thing on Gimme Radio.
Do a lecture, yeah.
Yeah, just like pick a year, pick out some songs that I did some research on. Also, go to Apple Music and give us a 5-star rating. We do appreciate it. And leave us a comment. If you would like to send us some comments about these episodes, or you want us to read some kind of feedback on the air, shoot us an email at requiempodcast@gmail.com, and we can do that. All right. So we've got Beyond the Gates of Hell, a very appropriate ending to Morbid Saint, Spectrum of Death. Any last words about Rich Dunslager, Mark?
No, you got me on that one.
All right, we're good.
I was going to sign out as Rich Dunslager.
We've said as much as we can possibly. Well, you know what? You can be Rich Dunslager. I'll be Wade Lalone.
Okay.
So for Beyond the Gates of Hell, Spectrum of Death, I'm Wade Lalone.
And I'm Rich Dunslager the second.
Hey, go listen to some 5.
Just